Toby's welcome to you all, and also thank everybody who took part in our survey. As you can see, we got a fairly broad, fairly even spread from across the industry. Our main sector, most populated sector, was those of the pay TV operators, and that may well explain what we can see here at the top, with 88% of our respondents taking pay TV services, subscribing at home. Another interesting part of this, just to kind of give an overview of our respondents, is the fall in catch-up services used at home. You can see there, down somewhat considerably from last year to just under 2/3. And I know that if anybody here has any particular questions on this, absolutely feel free to seek out Jack at the drinks after session. He typically and characteristically has some forthright opinions that he'll be more than happy to share with all of you. Moving on to the survey proper, we asked the first question, which was, what would the shift in spending power in acquisition and production budgets really kind of affect the market? What would it entail? And it's a really important question for the industry at the moment, the likes of Amazon, Netflix coming in with heavy investment in these areas. And unique and compelling shows, successful shows, they've always been a really important part of TV services, of gaining subscribers and retaining them over time. And that's not something that's really ever going to change. So these new dynamics and these new SVOD providers coming in and bringing new spending power to the market, and we can see that nearly half of our respondents see the industry's response coming in the form of greater control of assets, greater control of the relationship and ownership of the relationship over time. And that's really a necessity. It's the way that the market's evolving. It's going to be a big part of the market going forwards. And as competition intensifies, we can see that securing rights earlier and earlier in the development process is going to be a really key tactic in ensuring ownership over the types of content that's going to attract and retain viewers over time. And another trend that we're seeing in acquisition of rights comes with the increasingly aggressive pursuit of in-season stacking rights for catch-up services. And 32% of our respondents here said that the main driver behind that was the competition with SVOD providers. But if we kind of group a couple of these responses together, we can see another interesting story which kind of emerges from the results. And the wider suggestion really is that competing with these SVOD platforms, offering a better proposition, in really controlling the relationship with the viewer, necessitates these rights which allow the services to meet the demands of consumers who want to maybe view content more in non-linear ways these days, and also for the services who are going to want to be able to increase the time that viewers spend on their own service. And that's something which these in-season stacking rights can really help with. But there's another side of the coin too. It's not just about the service providers, it's about those granting rights and what it means for them. So they have to balance the need to obviously make as much value as they can and the value of granting these rights with also the potential impact of potential loss of value in subsequent windows. And on the subject of windowing, we asked what was going to happen over the next few years and what would windowing look like by 2020. And you can see an overwhelming response here that 96% of the people that took our survey were certain that change would happen in some way. So by 2020, there's going to be a big difference in what windowing structures and content licensing windows look like. A third thought that they would shrink and shorten, but really the two-thirds, or the half, sorry, that we've got there, expect that there's going to be more complexity in the markets. And that puts a lot of pressure on deal makers on both sides of the table to get as much from the deals as they can for their own business. So perhaps it's going to be those that can understand, analyze, predict the directions of change and the consequences that I have for their business who are really going to find themselves in positions of strength. So with change often comes risk. So what's the main risk associated with the changing license windows? We can see here that 26% of our respondents said it was the stronger SVOD platforms. That was the main risk. But an interesting thing happens here if we group together all of these responses. You can see on the far right the stronger SVOD platforms coming down to our joint fourth here, content value depreciation and consumer demand being unmet. There's just 11 percentage points. That's not a huge amount of difference across these factors. So really, if we group them together, what we can see is that there's a lot of risk factors all together, all competing to be the most important thing. And keeping an eye on these things and working out what they all mean is going to be really important. It's that multiplicity and the complexity which we saw again in the previous question, and that's really what the main risk factor seems to be. Switching gears a little bit as we move into UI and what's the most important UI feature for customer retention, customer acquisition, and keeping our viewers happy. As you can see here, we've got a bit of a lead there with personalized usage-based recommendations, those ones which give you some content based on what you've watched before. And it's quite a way out in the lead. But again, something interesting happens when we group some of these together. So if we take our usage-based recommendations and our trend-based recommendations in second place, along with our human and editorial recommendations in fourth, and add in our third place, global search, we can see that's all about helping people to find the content that they want to see quickly and easily. And together, that's 72% of our responses. So 3/4 of the people that took our survey really emphasized the fact that helping people to find content quickly and easily that's appropriate for them is going to be a key UI feature in keeping viewers happy, engaged, and retaining them over time. And if recommendations are going to be really important, if recommendations are going to be a huge feature in keeping people on your service, then how are they going to come about? So we offered our respondents a spectrum all the way from completely human created all the way through to completely created by algorithms in data. And most people kind of rejected that and actually said what you just need is a mix. So it was those two middle factors, a mix between human and data-led. And you can see that 2/3 essentially of our respondents there thought that it was going to be the mix, which is based upon data-based recommendations and algorithms with some human curation over the top, which would end up leading the way. Another trend that we're seeing in the market is these virtual pay TV operators, and that's something which Jack's going to cover later on in his part of the session. But we've seen a lot of them over the last year, especially in the US. Big players like Hulu and DirecTV has launched these services, and also some new entrants into the market, like YouTube, for example, have come along with these virtual pay TV operator services where they're combining extensive VOD libraries and inventories with live TV and feature sets which are increasingly including high DVR capabilities, and they're priced at price points which are some way lower than the traditional packages. We asked our respondents if this was a model which would translate successfully to the European market, and as you can see, there's quite a lot of caution, and that's perhaps fair. 2/3 of our respondents said it was simply too early to tell, and that's maybe led by the fact that we see services like Molotov claiming to have had a great first year. It claimed that they'd added 1 million subscribers in the first 9 months after launching in France this year. But then on the other side of the coin, just yesterday, Magin shut down its Swedish service. So perhaps caution is the right thing to emphasize there, and that's where the majority of our respondents went. Finally, wrap up before I pass on to Jack, and we asked what were the most important pay TV initiatives. We asked our respondents here to rank the 3 most important, and as you can see at the top, TV Everywhere came out on top. But again, if we return to that tactic of grouping some of these together, something interesting reveals itself again. So if we take the top 2, TV Everywhere and bundled SVOD content, they're some way out in the lead, and we can see that maybe those are coming towards being essential initiatives, essential parts of pay TV packages. If we get into the middle group there, we can see Home Gateway, MPVR, Start Over, all ranked relatively close together, and they seem to be like they're nice to haves. They're good things. They're helping attract and retain subscribers. But at the bottom there, 4K content, VR content, and EST, they may be less important, maybe not something to completely base your pay TV service around. EST, in fact, was the only initiative we had which got no first rank votes whatsoever. So with that, that's the overview of our survey which we ran. Thanks again to everyone who took part. And I'll hand you over to Jack, who will talk you through OTT and content distribution trends.